Hey guys, Brad Gilmore here. Want to give a big shout out to our title sponsor, Walker Texas Lawyer. If you or a loved one have been injured in an accident, whether that be a car, truck, motorcycle accident, or some kind of other issue, hit up Walker Texas Lawyer at 713-552-1117 or walkertexaslawyer.com.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Matthew McConaughey.
Brad Gilmore.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how are we doing?
Well, I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Jessica Alba and Lizzie Mathis. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Kevin Costner joins us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leno joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Chris Tucker is in the building. Chris Tucker, good morning to you.
Hey, Brad. Good morning to you. How are you?
George Lopez joins us right now. George, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What lovely to talk to me, funny lad.
Megan Trainor.
Thank you so much, Brad. You're awesome.
Chloe Bailey joins us. I appreciate the time.
Appreciate you.
And more. This is The Collection.
I am so
Now
excited
your
and have a
host,
great privilege
The
of talking
Vote.
to my next guest. He is the author of the brand new book, I Once Was Lost, and also the host of the Don Lemon Show. You can get on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your streaming platforms and streaming content. The host is here, Mr. Don Lemon. Don, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Brad. I really appreciate it. What did you say? YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and iHeart. Don't
And
forget
iHeart. I can't. How did I forget iHeart? Well, first of all, congratulations on all your success, and congratulations on the book going to #1, debuting there on the New York Times bestseller list. If I have my facts correct, how does that feel to be a best-selling author yet again?
It's on the bestseller list. My book, This Is a Fire, debuted at #1. This one, we'll see where it lands on the bestseller list. But yeah, it feels great to be. Why wouldn't it feel great to be a best-selling author? The first one was a little tough, Brad, to live up to, right? That was
Right.
high standards. Debuting at #1 was a little like, wow.
Well, but just think about, I don't know if this was in the plan for you. Like, I don't know if you ever saw yourself as, I'm going to write these series of books. I'm going to have this best-selling career as an author as well as, and not only a journalist. Do you enjoy the process of writing, though? Because I've written books myself, not in the same subject matter as you. Mine are more pop culture centric, but I don't enjoy the process. I find it very excruciating for me to write, but I'm so happy when I'm finished with it. What about you?
Same. It's excruciating, but there are moments do have moments where you're like, oh, where you're in the zone and you're feeling like, oh, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is good. And then there are more, I think, even more moments when you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't think of anything. What am I going to put here? No one's going to like this. But then you just kind of push through it, right?
Well, and is it like, in your estimation, are you saying at times like, because we all want it to be perfect, we all want it to be great, but we know perfection is something we can never achieve. So do you come to a time where you're like, you know what, this is the best the manuscript's going to get, I need to live with it?
Yes, but those are good because when you do that, then you go back to it and you can improve it. Because whenever the book is finished and I go back and read it, and there's always something that I can improve upon. So I think it's good when you put it in there and then you go back and you go, oh, well, that's actually a great idea. Maybe I didn't execute the writing or the delivery of it in the book or in the manuscript as much as, as well as it could be. And then you improve it. That's what editing. And then, you have a good collaborator and copy editor, and it's, you go, okay, well, this is great. Usually comes in to, out to be pretty good.
We love our copy editors. We all love our copy editors. They help us so much.
We do.
In regard to your book, Clive Davis gave a quote saying about your book, alive with the rhythm of modern American religion in all its beautiful complexity. Read this book and feel its pulse.
Yes.
What a great descriptor of the manuscript. But what does that mean to you when you read what Clive Davis had to say about your work?
I'm just looking at it on the back of the book. Look, if anyone knows about good writing, because with music comes good writing. And if anyone knows about the pulsating rhythms and complexity, it is Clive Davis, being one of the most prolific music producers and record industry, just bigwigs in history. It was amazing, because if you read the book, you know that I start out talking about, you start off in church. First the letter to my sister, and then you start off in church, and I write about how the piano's going and the organ's going, and then the ushers are coming down the aisle and the choir's coming down the aisle, and then all of a sudden you get into the service and the reverend comes in. It's like this big buildup, and then throughout the whole service, it's that way. So it's really like a musical production. And so for Clive to pick up on that really meant a lot. And for him to actually enjoy the way I did it, I put it together, just meant the world to me.
Mike Tyson is quoted and often given the quote attributed to, everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. And in regard to this book in particular, you had a different idea for it at first, if my research is correct, and then things happened in your life which sent you into a different direction with the book. Did you find that difficult to pivot, or was that somewhat of a cathartic thing to have this project to work on during a period of transition in your own personal life?
Well, I'll answer that. But I think a famous quote from Mike Tyson, and you'll probably have to bleep this, is when he came on my show jokingly, I don't know if you saw the research, he goes, "Don Lemon's full of shit." So that's my favorite Mike Tyson. But he was joking about that. But then it was both. It was the pivot was cathartic, and it was tough, because this is a whole time when the whole CNN mess was going on. So I started writing the book in 2022. I left CNN in 2023, and then I put the book down for the entire summer, and then picked it back up in the fall. But I was just sort of letting life happen, and it became a much better book. It was more cathartic. It became more personal. I intended to include more interviews with just sort of figures, high profile figures, maybe such as Clive, believers or not, and then also religious figures. And then the book just became so personal. I'm like, this is the book. And so I'm not saying I'm glad that happened to me, but It was certainly better for the book that I had, an experience to sort of bolster the importance of having faith. And as a lived experience, there's nothing better on paper or, than writing about it or producing it or whatever, than having a lived experience. That's the best. That's the best content.
Well, and to me, when you're somebody, and I can relate to this, who is on camera for a living, I think subconsciously or consciously feel that you always have to be that person that people see on television. Well put together, well dressed, hair well coiffed or well groomed, and always there ready to deliver the news or deliver the word of the day. And then when you go through your own personal struggles, like I have as well, it's hard for me to admit to myself that I'm not okay sometimes, that I'm going through something.
Well, you look good right now. I mean, I hate to cut you off, but your hair looks good, and you got the tie and the jacket and the pocket square, and it's good. Sorry.
I try to put together a little something, but people go through things, and I think I'm just wondering, as someone who's on camera, do you feel, and I know you speak about it in the book, did you feel that it was hard to almost admit to yourself that you weren't okay, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, and then when people read about that, when I write about it, it wasn't like I was like, crying in my soup and like on the verge. I wasn't, but I mean, some people do get to that point. My whole point in writing that and sharing that, I should say, was to continue, as I've tried to do in my previous work in my entire career, is to take the stigma off of mental health. And so, was it hard to admit to myself? Yeah, I write that in the book, and I remember, because I was writing a book, and my therapist knew that I was writing a book that was about faith. And he said, and he wanted me to go on antidepressants. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And whatever, I'll be fine. I just need to do whatever. And he said, the Lord helps those who help themselves. And I went,
He got me.
Right. You got me. And so I went on it, and then, life began to come back. And that's not to say it's always that way, right? That things are always great and they're always good. I mean, look, life ain't easy. It doesn't matter how much privilege people may perceive that you have, or how much money and people may perceive that you have. Everyone goes through very similar problems. money doesn't stop you from having issues or depression or whatever. Sometimes it's even worse, especially if there's an added level of fame, because more responsibility comes with all of that. But there's no woe is me, right? So, I mean, I think that having means certainly takes the edge off of, well, I know where my next meal is coming from. I know that I don't have to worry about the light bill. I know I don't have to worry about healthcare or any of that stuff. So it makes that part easier, but it doesn't really make, the mental issues easier, because your brain really doesn't know that, Yeah.
No, I mean, absolutely. And you obviously discuss all that in the book. But the other thing that I heard you mention recently, I believe it was an interview you did with Aaron Burnett on CNN, where you talked that you feel as though you're in your prime right now in career wise.
Mhm.
And that was a part of the profile I think the New York Times did on you. You feel as though you're in your prime. Do you enjoy the sense of, I guess, freedom of independent media as opposed to what's considered mainstream or corporate media or cable news, really having kind of your own way of approaching every story and really being your own boss? Is that something that you feel like you're thriving in and enjoying?
So yes, I do feel that. To answer very simply, yes. And every single day that I'm further away from what I did, and then I get closer to where, everyone is going, and people start to realize, and look, you're in traditional media and you know what's happening, right? It's about the law of, I shouldn't say law, it's about managing diminishing returns right now.
Mhm.
And so, well, I think that whether I would have much have preferred my exit from CNN to be different, but I think the timing was really good, and it offered me a runway to be able to, transition into the future, right? Into the now, really, of where the medium is going. And so it was sort of like, okay, it's bad that that happened. I wish it would have been different, but it's good that I'm getting a jump on everybody, because it's tough right now. So yes, I enjoy the independence. I can say whatever I want. But the one thing that I want, if I can share this with you, a lot of people they come to this side, and there are no editorial restraints. You don't have a boss. Your boss is you. You can say whatever you want. So they become trolls, right? And they start criticizing everybody in the media. Oh, I hate the mainstream media, and this sucks, and this person sucks. I can't believe they did that. And it's every headline is like blah 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 blah, calls out this person, and blah 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 blah, says some nasty thing about this network.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't want to be that person. So we'll see if that works in this thing without, being an internet troll. If you can have success here, we'll see. But I just don't want to become that, because I saw it happen all too often, and I think it's just gross.
Well, it is gross. It's absolutely gross, and it doesn't
And I
help
think you know what I'm talking about, and people like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I see it all the time. And you know what? I mean, that's part of the YouTube culture too, to have the thumbnail with with the big face reaction and the big headline, Don Lemon calls out so and so. I'm not saying you, but that's the
Right.
formula that a lot
Look,
of people
you have to do that sometimes, and I understand why people do that. But
Sure.
as long as you're fair, and I don't get, like, a headline is supposed to what? It's supposed to be attention grabbing.
Sure.
Right? So, and then look, there's a lot of competition when you're on YouTube and you're in the streaming. So I get that. But if the content actually is good, and you're not trolling people, and you're not being an ass, can I say that?
Yeah, that's fine.
In the content, then what you actually do, I don't mind it when their their thumbnails are a little bit ridiculous. I kind of laugh at them, right? Because they get my attention, and I'm, all of a sudden I'm into it. So I don't really mind that part of it.
Now, there's a sensibility in the country right now, and it's existed in the last several years, where there's a inherent, I don't know if distrust in the media is the proper terminology, but there is a sensibility that the media tends to highlight the things that divide us and not amplify things that unite us.
Mhm.
At least that's the sense of the American public. Do you see why people feel that way? And what's the suggestion to some of your media counterparts on how to bring more people together in the discourse?
I like you, Brad, because you're right about that. Everyone sort of traffics in controversy, right? And I'm generalizing when I say everyone, because that's what people are drawn to. And even if we aren't drawn to it, the algorithm draws us to that. So if you notice, if I can just, talk about this for a while, depending on the social media platform or digital platform you go on, their algorithm pushes you in a certain direction, whether you want it or not. And it all depends on what the people who run that particular platform want you to consume. And so I think that they understand that people thrive on controversy, right? That's why like people, click on the links that the thumbnails that you click on. That's why people read the tabloids. That's why people like gossip. That's why people like reality TV, right? They want to see, oh, sorry, did you see that? They want to see people like, throwing wine or pulling people's wigs off or whatever. So it kind of forces you into that. Look, I get it. I'm okay with that, but I wish that we would can come to a place where we have like a shared sense of reality. How do I turn that off?
I don't know. It's kind of fun though. I kind of enjoy
it. For those of people who are just listening, it's like my thumb goes up, the thumb goes up. I do my hand, oh, I did it again. And then the fireworks come on. I have to figure out how to turn that off. But I wish that we got to a place where there is some, even if we don't get back to, even if we don't move out of a place where it's all controversy, at least we can get some nuance. Everything doesn't have to be black and white.
Sure.
That we can hold 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thoughts in our heads at once. We can understand what is good political campaign strategy, and then what is what is good for the public, what the public deserves. And so, there are lots of things that we can do, but everybody is just so polarized and in their own corners. And because you say something that there's no nuance to it, like, I understand, but let me tell you, that's where the whole phrase, I'm of two minds about it, comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you can think two different things or multiple things. Yeah.
Two things can be true at once. And I think that finding more nuance is great. And when we talk about the political discourse in general, I'll use this as an example. So my grandmother, born and raised in Alabama, my grandfather born and raised in Texas, grandmother, lifelong proud Democrat, my grandfather, lifelong proud Republican. They didn't discuss politics in the House except once every 4 years when it was election day, and they say, hey, let's go cancel each other out. And they'd have a laugh about it because they didn't see their political differences as personal differences. And they also knew that back in that time, I felt like we all agreed on a problem and we had different solutions, to where now we can't agree on problems at all. We can't even agree that there's the same problem going on. How do you think, and what is your best suggestion? And I know it's a big question, to where we can find ourselves back into a discourse to where we can agree to disagree and move about our day?
Woof.
I just jumped it on you. I know.
Yeah, because if I had the answer to that, I'd be like, move out of the way, Kamala Harris. Here I come. I think we have to. The sad thing is that we don't have a shared reality of truth and facts, right? We don't even have a shared reality in this country, that people live different lives.
We have a curated reality based on who we follow and what we watch.
Right. And everyone is narrowcasting it. It's becoming more curated as time goes on. So, what did you say? How do we fix this?
Well, like what can we do? Like, because again, I live here in Houston. It's described as the most diverse city in the United States. So everyone you run into is either from a different city, a different country, has a different religion and a different political philosophy. And in this city, we don't really care that much about where you come from or anything. We just take you as you are, and we're all Houstonians. At least that's the vision that we like to paint and what I feel like we live in. I'm trying to figure out how can we get to that on a national scale, to where, if you watch CNN or Fox or MSNBC, whomever it is, or get your news from YouTube, you can agree on a set share of problems and just disagree about the solutions in a civil way.
Well, the thing is that I think that if we want to do that, everyone involved has to rely on facts. And so that you have certain organizations, right? If you, I'm not saying this just because they're to the right, but Fox News argued in court that they did not have an obligation to tell the truth to their viewers, right? When they were, with the Tucker Carlson lawsuit, they said, we don't have an obligation to tell the truth, right? So that's not part of what we do. And so I can't see any other news organization saying that. And so you'd have to have, first of all, a consensus that we are going to tell the truth and it's going to be factual. That's a good start. And then also you'd have to, I believe, transparency, where you have to tell people the difference between facts and editorializing an opinion and a point of view. And so I think in large part, it's incumbent upon the media to do it, but for us to have media literacy, to understand what you're listening to. Like if you go on podcasts or streaming, whatever, there's no editorial controls. There's no editorial rigors. There's no editorial complaints. You don't have to be truthful or factual. You can say whatever you want. And then especially if you have a large audience, it does not matter. No one is going to fire you or cancel you, or very rarely will you get sued, because the libel and slander laws are so tough. The threshold is so tough to succeed in court that people can just say whatever they want. So we'd have to come to a consensus about that. We'd have to have better media literacy, and the public would have to demand that. That's what would have to happen. But everyone is a purveyor in confirmation bias.
Yeah.
So they are watching the news organizations. They're getting the algorithms on YouTube, on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, that is confirming what they already believe. And so everyone is going, see, I knew that was right. Yeah, you tell them so we'd have to get away from that and just have like a real reality check.
Yeah, agree on a shared sense of facts.
Which is tough, which is more people, because nobody wants to be wrong.
Nobody
right?
wants to be wrong. And you know what? I mean, the thing is, before these things, you could just have these conversations, right? And not know really what's going on. But now with this, you can go on and find your facts. You can find an article or find something that backs up your point of view and opinion. And that's dangerous too. I wanted to ask you this, because I want to be gracious of your time, and I am. I find you to be there it is. I Once Was Lost, Don Lemon's new book, The Don Lemon Show, on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and iHeart. We have to get them all in there. But I feel like you're a very great interviewer. And I love listening to you when you have someone on your show, because you have this sense of preparedness. You understand everything that's going to happen within that time frame of the interview. I always also liked watching Larry King on CNN, who had a very different interview style than I think you did, but I really enjoyed watching him as well. What is your interview preparation, and how do you help curate a really great and substantive interview?
Well, it depends on the subject, but usually it's just sort of reading, but also it's also not about being over prepared. And I don't mean that you don't do your research and you don't, study up and find out who the interviewee is, right? I mean that you let the conversation happen. And people have to realize there's a difference between an interview and a conversation, right? So I think that I'm a good interviewer, but I think that I'm a great conversationalist. And I think Larry King was a great conversationalist. And so there's a difference. So when an interview is like when you're watching 60 Minutes and you're like, oh, and sometimes you get like a little bit uncomfortable and you're like, oh, whatever, right? And that's like a 60 Minutes interview, right? If you're watching, like if you're in the briefing room of the White House, that's an interview, right? That's like a question. There's a difference between a Q&A press conference. There's a difference between an interview, and then there's a difference between a conversation. So I like to believe that I'm more of a conversationalist, where I sit down and I'm like, so Brad, how are you? I like your tie. Does a tie say anything about you? Like, what do you, and you just start talking to people, right? What is it like to live in Houston? Yeah. You said that living in Houston, that you guys don't, you take people for where they are. What do you mean?
Right.
How is it? Like, what do you mean by that? An interview is on your policy towards the Middle East and such and in Iran and blah, 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 blah. That is an interview. That's okay. And then a Q&A is, can I ask you, like, at the border, what are you going to do about such and such? They're all different things, but people think they're the same thing and they're not. So you have to just be aware of what you're doing and where you are. And I think being a better conversationalist is always wins out, because then people, it's easier for people to listen to, but you can't always do that depending on the time and the venue.
Well, people can listen to you on the Don Lemon Show, right? On YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart, and they can get your new book, I Once Was Lost, available on Amazon or wherever you get your books from. Don, I really appreciate the time. I truly do.
Thank you, Brad. Listen, you have to remember too, it's not just about religion. It's about what's happening in our politics in our country, in the zeitgeist, all the issues that we're dealing with now, a woman's right, guns, racism, sexism, Islamophobia, all of those things, the separation of church and state are in this book. It was so timely that this book was supposed to come out after the election. When the publishers read it, they said people need to read this before they go vote. So I hope that people will pick it up and look at it, your viewers and listeners.
I hope that they do too. Those are all issues that people should be well read on before they make a trip to the ballot box. Absolutely. Don, again, I really appreciate the time, sir.
Thank you. Say hello to everybody in Houston. We used to vacation there all the time. Astro World.
Oh man, rest in peace, Astroworld. I know you're from Louisiana. You used to probably come by here a lot, so I appreciate you, man. I really do.
Thank you so much.
BeatStars.com.